It's great to talk to you.
You too, Robyn. It's amazing that our paths have not crossed. I see that you were you were in London in between 75 and 80. What was it?
I was there between 75 and 81. Yeah, 75, 81, 82. And then I went back to South Africa to work, and there were no diversion of angels in South Africa. That was for sure. And Appalachian Springs. So, because, when I was there, it was very Graham based. We did very little Cunningham. And I started working from scratch, mainly in the townships, because the white community thought I was nuts. I thought they were nuts too as well. So you,
that's a whole other conversation I would love to speak with you about, but the traditional conversation between two people who consider themselves members of the progressive branch of the modern dance would be Judson Church, well, at least in America, Judson Church, Grand Union, Merce Cunningham, and so on and so forth. I imagine that's not true in South Africa. What does it mean to be do I dare call you a postmodern choreographer?
Well, I mean, you can definitely call me a postmodern choreographer. I'm not even sure if I'm just a choreographer anymore. I don't
think you are either. I don't think you are. No.
I'm directing theater. I'm directing operas. I'm working real time with cameras. So I don't, and I feel just to be a choreographer is it limits me. And I'm so far away from my original studying, which was the Graham technique. I'm like,
right.
Out of necessity, survival, and I needed more.
Well, you'll have to excuse me if I focus the conversation, because when I was reading through your CV or your accomplishments, you've directed opera, you've done so many things. But if we're going to speak of movement-based or dance, would you describe yourself as a political artist?
Yeah. It depends what you want to define as political, though. A loaf of bread is political. Toilet paper is political. I mean, I've gone through different phases as an artist. I won't even say as a choreographer, as an artist, and all the phases have still been political. I think even now, my most recent piece that I've just done again in a new piece from South Africa with some South African dancers, it is very political on many levels, I think it's important to scrutinize all the time when you're making art, whether your surroundings are cohesive enough for you to make work.
How do you mean cohesive? Cohesive. What do you mean cohesive?
And maybe cohesive is not the right word, but healthy. Whether it's a healthy climate in which you're working or in which I am working. I need to feel a certain kind of camaraderie with the dancers, with the artwork, with whoever I'm working with. I need the same amount of participation as I put in, that they need to put in. So, and that can become very political.
Yes. Well, don't get me wrong. I believe that politics is an expression of human plurality, and I borrowed that from Ms. Hannah Arendt, a favorite of mine, and so that we are social animals, and we are animals that need rules and laws, and we need ways of thinking how to be together without killing each other. So yeah, I agree with you. Everything is political. So this work is pretty provocatively titled, and I can't resist, but I look at your titles, they all read in a way a bit like surrealist poetry or Dadaist poetry or something. What's behind this particular title? I'd love to hear it in your own words.
Well, what is behind, I mean, there's several things behind this title. When I started working with Albert, when we started working together, originally, I really wanted to work on the issue of corrective rape in South Africa amongst mainly lesbian women.
Could you explain that? It was mentioned several times in the materials that Janet Wong gave to me, but I think I know what it is, but could you explain this idea of corrective rape?
It's a terrible phenomena, and it's very present in the culture, in our culture in South Africa. It happens mainly amongst Black lesbians, where they are raped by men and then killed because they're lesbian. And you know, in South Africa, we have a very, very good constitution. Probably one of the best constitutions in the world, but there is there's traditional thinkers that can't really accept certain things in the new South Africa, and I think a lot of men are threatened by these strong women. Strong lesbians, and it is a terrible, it's an atrocity, and it keeps happening. Anyway, when we finally started working, I felt that I needed to work with a lesbian. I felt I needed input from her. That's not to say that Albert is inadequate. He's not at all inadequate, but I needed to access the temperament, which I couldn't access from Albert. But at the same time, I came back to South Africa, and I was seeing a lot of things that were really disturbing me, like corruption and misuse of funding, and just misuse of our history, of our past, of what we fought so hard for, and it just, everything wasn't adding up for me. And so I decided to push it in another direction and deal with colonization and the effects of colonization on everybody during apartheid.
Well, but, you know, to
take it into the present day, to take it from, so Albert appears in the beginning as an African leader, and presents himself with other leaders in the world, but at the same time, he's also dealing with the negligence and the discourse of colonization, which is not a new subject. You know, it's really not a new subject. Lots of artists have worked on it for centuries, really. So the piece started becoming about that, and we were pushed into a situation where we were looking at greed and envy and all the sins.
Yes, right. Let's circle back just for a moment, because you use our country. You sound like a real patriot, and yet you would be considered a white person, correct, in South Africa?
Absolutely.
And as you know,
I am a white person in South Africa.
Yes. Okay. Well, I didn't know how you quote self-identify, because this raises all, and I'm very underdeveloped in terms of understanding how the issue of race works in an artist like you, because you say very easily our history. So you can claim the history of people of every color, and now you claim, or I should say, you use people who are minority sexual minorities and so on. I was told that there was a major presenter who was very taken with your work, but says, you know, I could never present it in the United States because she's a white woman. What do you, how does, I'm sure that's not new to you, but how could you talk about that and how do you deal with it?
Well, you know, Bill, it's very hard. It's very hard. I've been involved with the struggle from the year dot. My family, I'm first generation South African. My family are Jews that come from Lithuania. They couldn't get into America or Britain or Canada or any of those places between the First and Second World Wars. So the only place they could come to was, the only country that would accept them was South Africa. They came to South Africa. They got accepted into the country because apparently their skins were white. So they immediately became first-class citizens. But a lot of those Jews were communists, were very much a part of the struggle in South Africa.
The struggle being against apartheid?
Yeah. My parents mixed with a lot of political people of that ilk. A lot of their friends were put in jail and managed to escape. And
so you are very much a South African. I'm saying you're a patriot when you speak and you say our history and corruption and our leaders and so on. Is that true? That your identity as a South African really shapes your way of looking at the world? Is that true?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I walk into a theater in Berlin, which is where I'm living now, and I see how little people of color are sitting in the audience. And I just think to me, I just think, what the hell is going on? I mean, my daughter, my husband and I adopted a little Zulu girl. She's now 19. And I've watched her grow up in Berlin and I've seen the racism that she's gone through. And I only understand it because of where I come from.
So this piece is toured. We're Johnny come lately here, getting this wonderful
very
piece
Johnny come lately.
Yes, I see. Although I understand you have been at the Castle Theater across the river on one or two occasions with Jed. Yeah. Sorry that I missed those performances, but New York is it's very close. New Jersey is very close, but very far away, you know, in terms of. So, well, okay. What has been the reaction from people of color around this work?
Let me see, people of color. I mean, we've performed it in South Africa and it's been extremely well accepted. But I think South Africans have a much more raw approach to in-your-face stuff, you know, when you're talking politically and when you're doing things that are uncomfortable. And we talk about racism and we talk, you know, we'll say, oh, that whitey, oh, that darky, you know, we're not very politically correct. Because we call a spade because racism is not left. Not left.
Right. Yeah. Well,
the country. I mean, it's still very much there.
Well, speaking as that's why I'm asking you the question, because if this work in particular is a kind of a reconciling with, you said 20 years of South Africa's liberation, or I guess that's liberation, right? That's where your press materials read. What is there for a person who is not South African to find in this work?
I think what is there is that there is inherent in South Africa, and when I say South Africa, I talk about the majority of the people of South Africa. So apparently you don't say people in America, you say folk. I mean, we don't have a problem with the word people.
No, I don't either. I don't know who told you that we did, because folk sounds so much like German.
Yeah.
Is that what it is? Yes. No, I don't think that people. Yeah.
No. I worked with a group of. I did an opera. I did Porgy and Bess with a group of American opera singers and artists who were phenomenal, and they were offended when I used the word people.
Really? Well, what was the reason?
Yeah.
What was their reason?
They just said, you don't say that, it's racist.
Well, okay, everybody can claim that, but I give you dispensation, my sister. You're allowed to say people, because I am, like I say, I am very interested in plurality as a human being, as a species, and that we have politics is the way in which we as a species find a way to coexist. So, and I say the people, it's a plural. We say men, not man, excuse the misogyny in that, but therefore we are a people. We're not folk right now. I don't know how young hip people talk about folk. Folk I know I was performing at Lincoln Center and I was doing a piece and I said, how are you folks doing tonight? And everyone thought it was very quaint that I would use that term, folk.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they thought it was very, how you folks doing? Because it's very down home. It's a little old fashioned. But you know, words are words. So what else, what do you think a first time viewer of your work, or particularly this work, should come equipped to deal with?
Well, I think what is important to note is that once apartheid was dismantled, once the fight is over, it's never over, but once the big fight is over and normality sets in, normality is universal. Corruption is universal. Day-to-day business is universal. And South Africa is no different to any other country where governments don't work. But at the same time, the ending, it talks about Africa as a continent that has been ransacked, that has been abused. And yet in South Africa, there still is, and I think in most of Africa, actually, there's still this belief that Africa is a place of harmony and beauty and hope. And
that's a belief held by Africans, or the world looks at Africa?
No, held by Africans, held by Africans. And that humanity is very special. It really is special. I can't explain it, but after every performance, there is this glowing sensation. And I think it's got to do with Albert being a Sangoma, a shaman in other people's terms. He is a healer. And I think that he does, you know, he talks about we don't kill with our weapons, we dance with our weapons. You know, there's a lot of irony in the piece that builds all the time. I mean, the fact that we're using very first world, very Western music, we really colonized that music.
I saw that you were saying you colonized Mozart. Could you speak to that?
Yeah. I mean, it's very precious music, that particular piece of music of Mozart's. And there's, you know, there he is in one section having an orgasm, and there he is in another section eating an orange, and there he is in another section having people clean him. You know, there's we've said, okay, you come and colonize Africa, fine, we colonize your music. So I don't know if anybody ever really picks it up in that kind of depth, but that was, for me, that was a very, very decisive. I made a decision to do that because I kept on feeling that leaders are so grand, and yet they're not so grand. Leaders of country are so grand, they're actually so disappointing. And there's all this pomp, and yet underneath it all, there isn't this pomp, you know.
Could you just for a moment take us back? This is a word that is used so much now. What do you mean by decolonize?
What I mean by decolonize is to break it down, to deconstruct colonization. And sometimes the way to decolonize is very simple, is to play colonization at its own joke. I mean, it's one form. I think academically, if you're talking about decolonization, I think that you would have to prove a lot more explicitly how you would decolonize. But we take a lot of, or I take a lot of things in the piece that are very first world, and I push them in another direction.
Another direction, as in, what do you mean?
As in, they have a different possibility. They have a different metaphor, a much more insightful metaphor, a much more negative metaphor, positive metaphor. You know, I don't allow it to ever settle. As I've found a first world or a Western point. You know, it's too complicated to just see it as that.
Well, the West, the modernism, let's put it that way, would like to claim the mantle of reason above all else as a quality of civilization, which means, as you know, for those people, it meant Europeans, right? So are you taking issue? I noticed in a lot of your statements and other people's, it's this work is a raucous, chaotic display. This performer is able to hold warring personalities in a chaotic, though intriguing manner. So chaos. Is the world, the anti-colonial world, a world that is dependent on a certain sort of chaos?
I don't think so, because I think when you look at traditional, I mean, at the end, he creates a structure for himself. He strips himself, he paints himself blue, he protects himself, and he talks very honestly about what it is to just be a human being. And that's not about chaos. That's about very central feelings of humanity.
I look at titles sometime, and I think, is the man or woman in the street able to understand this Dadaist provocation that is oftentimes your titles? What about that? I mean, what's the gap between an intellectual like yourself and the persons that you feel such love for and compassion for? Do they get it? Why the work is so inscrutable?
Do you think it's inscrutable?
I'm looking for a word that maybe is comes close to what I feel.
Okay. First of all, I don't think I'm an intellectual. I really don't think. I really don't think I'm an intellectual, and I think one of the reasons why I have these long titles is because I often cannot find a singular title for my pieces, because my pieces are about so many things. So I like to dip the audience into what I've been thinking during the process. And that and that's actually a very Dada thing to do, really. And that's why I suppose you can say I'm this Dadaist, inscrutable piece. But I always hope that people come to work with a naivety, with just what is this? You know, I mean, and where's it going? And is it touching me without getting up and leaving?
Beautifully put. When I was working with Fela's work, the Nigerian, he often talked about the market women. My work, the work took off when the market women were singing Zombie, or the market women were, he was embraced by, I don't know enough about South Africa. So do the quote, market women, get it, embrace it.
Yeah. I mean, but you know, this piece has never come to America. I think America is a very different.
No, I'm actually talking about in South Africa,
in
Europe, and in France, where I know Montpellier, I know those places. Are you getting the quote, the new immigrants, who comes to the work, and how do they understand it when they get there?
I get a lot of different people coming to my work. I do get a lot of different people coming to my work, and I think they do understand it.
Well, bravo, bravo.
I think it depends also what city you're in France. There's some very, very conservative cities, and there's some very, very forward-thinking cities. So it's, I mean, the piece was very well accepted and appreciated in Paris, in Montpellier. In Montpellier, yeah, in fact, that was our first performance. Yeah, we were in Montpellier. I think people were shocked. I think they're shocked. I think Europeans, unlike Americans, are still getting over their history with Africa. And some countries aren't. Yeah.
I find the French intelligentsia, as much as I love what they stand for, and égalité and liberté and all that, but I do feel that they have, they are not so, I think they really think that their culture centers the world. And God bless France, right? They have, and with that expectation that their culture centers the world, is that the world will, and yes, this is Hegelian, the world will aspire to the enlightened values of France, of Germany, of oh, I know what you mean, but what do they think? You know, and that's so important. These are all unfair questions to ask an artist. These are kind of anthropological, historical questions. We're really excited the work comes. Is there anything that you would like in this to convey about how does it feel to becoming your New York premiere at our theater? We're really excited to say that the New York premiere of Robyn Orlin, or Robyn Orlin's this work in particular.
I'm very excited. I really am very excited. I'm quite old. I've been around the block. I've been going for a long time. And I'm curious. I'm very curious to see how Albert will work his beauty and humanity with America, because I think America is very politically correct and not very politically correct. And I think New York is very different to Seattle, as it is to Chicago, where I lived for 5 years. I think that I'm curious. I'm really curious. I mean, I think I get a lot of flack about, you're white, how can you talk about these things? Why can't I talk? Nobody owns history. Why can't I talk about? I'm deeply hurt. I'm deeply moved. There are things I need to say about it. Why shouldn't I have to say? When producers say I could never take her work, she's a white South African.
I have a feeling there is a tiered art world, and yes. Now there's a tiered art world, and so when we hear an opinion, are we hearing the opinion of the women in the marketplace? Quote, my sister who is always on my case about fancy blacks with degrees. She said, look, I come from Main Street. I know what's happening with people of color, black people struggling, and you all sit around with your theories and ideas and your long words and all. So I'm very cautious of that. Who are the opinion makers? Who are the opinion makers? And when we say they, because I think that a lot of us wonder how you can be a white person and embrace the we in South Africa. That is a very big question for me personally. As you know, my last work, Deep Blue Sea, was trying to ask the question, I've been raised with Martin Luther King's "We shall overcome," or "we, the future," and I've been raised with "we the people" from the US Constitution, we. But every day we watch it fracture in front of us. And that's the country you're coming to right now. You say politically correct right now to say anything, to talk about people's pronouns, or to talk about systemic racism. Those things are really going to sway the next election, because people have said, enough already. We don't have to feel guilty about history. We don't have to teach our children about slavery. We don't have to. So I wish we were like we were maybe back during the era of Bill Clinton, when the country saw itself as being liberal democracy and come one, come all, everyone has a right to express their opinion. That is ever more being threatened right now. That is the climate in which your piece is going to be landing in New York. What do you dare say about freedom? What do you dare say? And that's why I hope that we also can get the firebrands in the communities of color to come in and get over their concerns about if you gave a white woman this platform, are you taking it away from a black one? Now, that's obviously not an issue in South Africa, but here, that's where the conversation is, equity. And, any comment to that, or?
Well, yeah, I mean, now in South Africa, it's very hard for me to work. It's very, very hard for me to work. And a lot of people, a lot of Black choreographers I don't take funding from South Africa. And I work with people that want to work with me. Mm-hmm. I don't, and I understand why they look at me as white, and they can, it's fine. But I do have a voice. Mm-hmm. And I will use my voice as much as I can use my voice, because I think my voice is very important.
You're a badass. Right, that's the language you're talking about. I don't give a damn about what you say I can or cannot do. I am a brave person, and I do what I feel I must do. That is always going to be something. My friend Salman Rushdie was just almost killed last week, right? I had just seen him the week before. This is a man who has tried to walk the walk and talk the talk in that way. So there are ramifications of your freedom, but I'm with you, my sister. Let's see if we can make this thing, and let's say, I hope we can get a conversation really going around these ideas, what's been eroded with our correctness, and who owns pain, who owns history, as so many of us.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I bless you. And I look forward to seeing you in the flesh and giving you a squeeze. We welcome you with
Thank
open
you.
arms.
Thank you. I'm
Robyn.
so looking forward to seeing you.
Great, great. Goodbye now, Robyn.
Bye-bye.